The 6th of June, 1944, Biak Island, Dutch New Guinea. Corporal Harold Morrison of the 41st Infantry Division of the United States was entrenched behind a charred palm log when the first Japanese mortar round exploded just 15 meters from his position. The coral ground shattered on impact, sending sharp fragments in all directions as the blast echoed across the island's rocky hills. Morrison adjusted the WWII telescopic sight of his customized Springfield M1903A4 rifle, a weapon that had reached him through a story almost too unbelievable to be true. 3 months earlier, at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, his platoon mates had openly mocked him as he received weekly military mail packages, each containing carefully selected parts to transform his standard rifle into a deadly precision machine. Now, with sweat mixing with coral dust on his sunburned face under the tropical heat, Morrison knew every penny invested in those handcrafted modifications would make the difference between life and death in the coming days of combat. Harold Morrison was born on a farm in Nebraska in 1922, the son of a World War I veteran who had returned from France with stories about the importance of marksmanship. Since the age of 8, Morrison had learned to hunt rabbits and deer across the vast plains of the American Midwest, developing a natural skill that set him apart among the local youth. When he was drafted into the Army in March 1943, Morrison already had a local reputation as one of the best shooters in Lancaster County. During basic training at Fort Devens, his instructors quickly identified his exceptional talent, but the young soldier had an obsession that both intrigued and amused his barrack mates. Morrison spent nearly his entire military paycheck buying precision parts through specialized catalogs, turning his standard-issue rifle into a custom weapon that rivaled the best civilian hunting rifles of the time. The WWII 4-scope had cost 2 months' salary, the trigger tuned by a Boston gunsmith had consumed another month's pay, and the modifications to the barrel and stock represented almost 6 months of savings. His fellow soldiers often joked that Morrison loved his rifle more than any girl he'd ever met, but the young Nebraskan knew he was preparing a tool that could save American lives when real combat began. The 41st Infantry Division, known as the Sunset Division because of its orange insignia, had been activated in September 1940 as part of America's defensive mobilization before the country's official entry into the war. Originally composed of National Guard units from Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota, the division underwent intense amphibious and jungle warfare training in Oregon and later in Australia. Morrison joined the division's 163rd Infantry Regiment in January 1944 as the unit was preparing for operations in Dutch New Guinea. General Douglas MacArthur's strategy of island hopping required coordinated attacks against heavily fortified Japanese positions, where every meter of conquered ground came at the cost of American blood. Biak Island, with its strategic airfields and natural coral defenses, represented one of the most challenging objectives in the Pacific Campaign. The Japanese had turned the island's limestone caves into a network of interconnected bunkers, defended by approximately 11,000 veteran soldiers under Colonel Naoyuki Kuzume, an experienced officer who had fought in China and the Philippines. The American landing on Biak had begun 3 days earlier, in the early hours of the 27th of May, 1944, when the first elements of the assault force hit the beaches under intense Japanese artillery fire. Morrison and his sniper team had arrived in the second wave, carrying not only their customized rifles, but also specialized equipment that included Bausch and Longmate X30 binoculars, detailed topographic maps of the island, and 30-06 Springfield match-grade ammunition that Morrison had secured through contacts in the division's supply depot. The Springfield M1903A4 rifle Morrison carried weighed approximately 4.1 kilograms with the scope mounted, fired 30-06 cartridges with a muzzle velocity of 853 meters per second, and had an effective range of over 800 meters in the hands of a skilled marksman. The WWII 4-scope provided 4x magnification with a crosshair reticle, allowing accurate shots even in low visibility conditions. The trigger had been tuned to a pull weight of exactly 1.4 kilograms, eliminating any unnecessary movement that could compromise accuracy. Morrison had extensively tested his weapon during training in Australia, consistently achieving sub-5 centimeter shot groupings at 200 meters, extraordinary precision for a military rifle of that era. In the first 2 days of the Biak invasion, Morrison had distinguished himself as one of his company's most effective sharpshooters, eliminating 7 Japanese soldiers in defensive positions that threatened the American advance. But now, on the morning of May 30, he faced his greatest challenge. American military intelligence had identified a Japanese command post dug into a limestone cave atop a rocky elevation known on military maps as Hill 265. The position had a clear view over Biak's main airfield and allowed Japanese spotters to direct artillery and mortar fire against any American movement in the area. 3 previous attempts at direct assault had failed, costing the lives of 18 American soldiers and wounding another 42. Major William Bradford, commander of the 2nd Battalion of the 163rd Regiment, had authorized a special sniper mission to neutralize the threat, and Morrison had been selected to lead a team of 3 elite marksmen on a night infiltration that would position them approximately 400 meters from the enemy stronghold. Preparations for the mission began at nightfall on May 29, when Morrison and his 2 teammates, Corporal Jimmy Walsh from Chicago and Private Tony Benedetto from Brooklyn, received detailed briefing on the operation. Walsh carried a modified M1 Garand rifle with an M84 scope and had been a shooting champion in the Great Lakes region before enlisting. Benedetto, the son of Italian immigrants who worked in a foundry, had exceptional skill with the Browning M1918 automatic rifle and would be responsible for providing suppressive fire if the team was discovered. All 3 soldiers also carried Colt M1911A1 pistols as secondary weapons, Mark II fragmentation grenades, SCR 536 radios for command post communication, and K rations for 48 hours of independent operation. Morrison had painted his face with dark green and brown camouflage, a technique he had learned from Australian jungle warfare instructors. His combat uniform had been treated with a mix of mud and local vegetation to eliminate any shine that could betray his position to enemy observers. The nighttime infiltration through Biak's dense jungle tested the physical and mental limits of the 3 American soldiers. For 7 hours, they moved cautiously across rugged terrain infested with Japanese patrols, advancing meter by meter using stealth movement techniques learned during specialized training in Australia. The island's sharp coral ground cut through their combat boots, but they could not risk making any noise that might alert enemy sentries. Morrison led the formation, using his hunting experience to find the best paths and avoid dense vegetation that could create revealing sounds. Walsh followed 5 meters behind, carrying not only his rifle but also a backpack with extra ammunition and basic medical supplies. Benedetto closed the formation, constantly checking the rear and keeping his bar ready for immediate action in case they were spotted. Twice during the night, Japanese patrols passed less than 20 meters from their position, forcing the soldiers to remain completely still for what felt like an eternity as enemy troops armed with Type 99 Arisaka rifles and Type 96 light machine guns conducted security rounds. By dawn on May 30, Morrison and his team had reached an ideal location on a rocky elevation covered in dense foliage, offering a clear view of Hill 265 and the Japanese command post. Morrison set up his firing position behind a natural rock formation that offered protection against counter-sniper fire and perfect visual concealment. The distance to the target was precisely measured using an optical rangefinder at 387 meters, well within the capabilities of his modified Springfield rifle. Atmospheric conditions were ideal for precision shooting, with minimal wind and excellent visibility under the tropical sun. Morrison carefully adjusted his scope to account for distance and ballistic conditions, using trajectory data he had memorized over months of intense training. The first Japanese target appeared in his scope at 7:23 when an enemy officer stepped out of the cave entrance to observe American positions through binoculars. Morrison controlled his breathing, applied gradual pressure to the tuned trigger, and fired the first shot of the mission. The 30-06 match-grade bullet covered the 387 meters in approximately half a second, hitting the Japanese officer squarely in the chest and eliminating the target instantly. The Japanese response to Morrison's first shot was immediate and violent. Enemy soldiers emerged from several camouflage positions around Hill 265, trying to locate the shot's origin as Type 92 machine guns began sweeping the area with suppressive fire. Morrison held his position, knowing that revealing himself prematurely would doom the mission and likely his team. Over the next 40 minutes, he patiently watched through his scope, waiting for clean shot opportunities that wouldn't compromise his camouflage. The second target appeared at 8-7 when a Japanese sergeant tried to reposition a Type 96 machine gun for better coverage. Morrison slightly adjusted his aim to compensate for the new angle and fired his second shot, hitting the enemy soldier in the neck and instantly neutralizing the threat. Walsh and Benedetto remained in support positions, ready to provide covering fire if discovered, but maintaining absolute fire discipline to preserve the mission's element of surprise. The third and fourth targets of Morrison appeared almost simultaneously at 8:34, when two Japanese soldiers attempted to recover the machine gun left behind by the fallen sergeant. Morrison had to make a critical tactical decision, choosing between the two targets based on which posed a greater, immediate threat to American forces. He selected the soldier who was closest to reaching the machine gun's position, firing a shot that hit the target in the center of the body mass. The second Japanese soldier, alarmed by his comrade's fall, tried to take cover behind a rocky formation, but Morrison had already adjusted his scope and fired a fourth shot that found its target before the man could reach safety. Morrison's deadly accuracy was beginning to cause panic among the Japanese defenders of Hill 265, who could not locate the source of the enemy fire and were watching their comrades fall one after another with no chance to retaliate. Morrison knew that each successful shot not only eliminated an enemy, but also psychologically demoralized the remaining defenders and facilitated the eventual assault of American infantry on the position. During the next 60 minutes, Morrison continued his methodical hunt of the Japanese defenders on Hill 265, using all his experience as a hunter and marksman to select targets of opportunity through his scope. The fifth target was a Japanese spotter attempting to use a periscope to locate the American position without exposing himself to sniper fire. Morrison waited patiently until the enemy soldier made the fatal mistake of exposing part of his body, firing a shot that eliminated the threat at 9:41. The sixth target presented a greater technical challenge, being a Japanese sniper positioned in a side cave who was also trying to locate Morrison's team. This sniper duel lasted approximately 20 minutes, with both shooters attempting to detect the other's position without exposing themselves to enemy fire. Morrison finally identified a faint reflection from the Japanese scope and fired a calculated shot to ricochet off the cave wall, striking the enemy sniper through rock fragments and neutralizing the threat at 10-3. Now that you know me better and understand the kind of content we produce here on the channel, let me ask a direct question that might spark an interesting discussion in the comments. When you think of soldiers who modified their own weapons during World War II, which aspect stands out the most? The personal dedication to gaining a tactical edge, the technical knowledge required to make such modifications, or the courage to trust non-standard equipment in life and death situations? Leave your opinion in the comments, because these discussions help other military history enthusiasts better understand the human nuances behind major conflicts, and I always read and respond to every comment you leave here. Morrison's 7th and 8th targets appeared during a coordinated Japanese attempt to flank his position. Through his scope, he observed two enemy soldiers trying to move along the eastern slope of Hill 265, likely aiming to reach a position that would allow them to attack the American team from behind. Morrison silently signaled the threat to Walsh with hand gestures, but decided to personally engage the two Japanese soldiers before they could compromise the mission's security. The first soldier was eliminated at 10:47 with a shot from approximately 420 meters, testing the limits of his modified Springfield rifle's accuracy. The second soldier, seeing his comrade fall, tried to rush toward a cover position, but Morrison had already adjusted his aim and fired an 8th shot that hit the moving target at 10:51. Morrison's ability to hit moving targets at long distances demonstrated not only his technical expertise as a shooter, but also his ability to remain completely calm under extreme combat pressure. The situation on Hill 265 had become critical for the Japanese defenders, who now faced not only the constant threat of Morrison's precision fire, but also the psychological pressure of knowing that any movement in their positions could result in instant death. Morrison's 9th target was a Japanese officer attempting to reorganize the defenses of the position, a movement detected through the scope at 11:19. This officer posed a significant strategic threat, as his leadership could restore discipline and organization among the remaining defenders. Morrison carefully studied the officer's movement patterns through his scope, waiting for the ideal moment for a clean shot that would guarantee immediate elimination. When the Japanese officer paused for a few seconds to consult a map, Morrison fired his 9th shot of the mission, which traveled the 387 meters to the target with lethal precision hitting the officer in the center of the body mass and permanently eliminating the threat of reorganizing the enemy defenses. The 10th target appeared at 11:52 when a Japanese soldier attempted to operate a Type 92 heavy machine gun that had been abandoned during the early moments of the sniper action. This machine gun posed a serious threat to future American operations in the area, as its position offered excellent lines of fire over the approach routes used by American infantry. Morrison observed through his scope as the Japanese soldier struggled to reposition the 27.2-kilogram heavy machine gun, patiently waiting for the moment when the enemy would become a stationary target. When the Japanese soldier finally stopped to adjust the machine gun's sight, Morrison fired his 10th shot of the mission, eliminating the operator and ensuring the weapon remained unusable. Morrison's consistent precision throughout the operation was demonstrating the value of his obsession with quality equipment and intensive training, fully validating the investments he had made in modifying his Springfield rifle. The 11th and final target of Morrison's mission appeared at 12:31, nearly 5 hours after the start of the sniper operation. A Japanese soldier cautiously emerged from a side cave carrying what appeared to be a field radio, likely attempting to establish communication with higher command to request reinforcements or artillery support. Morrison immediately recognized the critical importance of eliminating this threat before the enemy soldier could transmit information about the situation on Hill 265. Morrison's final shot was fired from a slightly greater distance than the previous ones, approximately 410 meters, due to the location of the cave where the Japanese radio operator was positioned. The .30-06 match-grade bullet hit the target with the same lethal precision that had characterized all previous shots, eliminating the radio operator and ensuring that no information about the American operation would reach Japanese command in the region. With 11 enemy soldiers eliminated in under 6 hours, Morrison had effectively neutralized the Japanese command position on Hill 265 and paved the way for a successful assault by American infantry. Throughout the operation, he had fired exactly 11 .30-06 cartridges, achieving 100% effectiveness in his shots and demonstrating a level of precision rarely seen even among veteran elite snipers. Walsh and Benedetto had provided flawless security for the operation, maintaining constant vigilance over possible threats to the flanks and rear without compromising the team's camouflage. The absolute fire discipline maintained by the 3 American soldiers had been crucial to the mission's success, allowing Morrison to complete his work without drawing effective counterfire from the remaining Japanese positions. At 13, Morrison radioed via SCR 536 to the 2nd Battalion command post that the enemy position had been neutralized and was ready for the infantry assault. The final assault on Hill 265 began at 14:30, when 2 companies of the 163rd Infantry Regiment advanced in coordination against the weakened Japanese position. The elimination of the main defenders and the leadership of the position by Morrison had created a tactically favorable situation for the American forces, who encountered minimal resistance during the final advance. The remaining Japanese soldiers, demoralized by the loss of their comrades and lacking effective leadership, offered only sporadic resistance before abandoning their positions or surrendering to American forces. Morrison and his team were extracted from their sniper position at 15:45, having perfectly completed their mission without casualties and with total tactical success. During the post-action briefing with Major Bradford, Morrison detailed each engagement, providing valuable information on Japanese tactics and weaknesses in enemy defenses that would be used in future operations in the Biak campaign. Morrison's exceptional performance during the Hill 265 operation became legendary within the 41st Infantry Division, but the young sniper from Nebraska never allowed the mission's success to feed his personal ego. He continued to serve with distinction during the rest of the Biak campaign and later in operations in the Philippines, always maintaining the same professionalism and dedication that had characterized his action on Hill 265. Morrison survived the war, returning to Nebraska in March 1946 with a collection of decorations that included the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart for wounds received in Luzon, and the Philippine Liberation Medal. He never spoke publicly about his combat experiences, preferring a quiet life as a farmer and occasionally as a shooting instructor in civilian competitions. The modified Springfield rifle that had served him so well during the war was carefully preserved and eventually donated to the local museum in Lancaster County, where it remains as a silent testament to the dedication and skill of a common American soldier who became one of the most effective marksmen of the Pacific Campaign. The story of Harold Morrison perfectly illustrates how the combination of natural talent, intensive training, quality equipment, and personal dedication can transform an individual soldier into a significant force multiplier on the battlefield. His seemingly eccentric obsession with modifying his rifle, which initially provoked laughter among his unit mates, turned out to be visionary preparation that saved American lives and contributed decisively to the success of critical military operations. Morrison represented thousands of American soldiers who served during World War II, ordinary men who used their special skills and unique knowledge to face extraordinary challenges in extreme circumstances. The deadly precision of his 11 shots on Hill 265 was not just a demonstration of technical prowess, but also an example of the American determination to win the war through individual superiority and constant innovation. If you've made it this far, I know you share the same passion I have for these extraordinary stories of courage and dedication that help shape our history. That's why I want to extend a special invitation for you to join our community of military history enthusiasts. When you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, you're not just watching videos, you're becoming part of a select group of people who value deep research, the details that make all the difference, and the real stories behind history's defining moments. Here, you'll always find content based on primary sources, authentic historical documents, and accounts you'll rarely see anywhere else. Our community grows every day with people who understand that learning these stories is a way to honor the sacrifice of those unsung heroes, and by being part of it, you help keep alive the memory of soldiers like Harold Morrison, who made a difference when it mattered most.